It is 3 o'clock, so I call the Greater Dayton RTA Board of Trustees meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mary, will you take the roll call, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Hogan?
Yes.
Ms. Hurd?
Yes.
Mr. Corrado?
Here.
Mr. Depp? Ms. Pearson?
Here.
Ms. Howard?
Present.
Ms. Jones?
Here.
Mr. Lumpkin? Mr. Williamson?
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of April 7th. As has been our custom, those minutes were mailed to all of the Board of Trustees well in advance of today's meeting. Unless there's a board member who requests a reading of those minutes, are there any changes or corrections to those minutes? Hearing no request for the reading of those minutes and not having heard any corrections or additions to those minutes, let the record show those minutes are approved as submitted. As it was mentioned, as is listed in the program, we do have a new board member, Mr. John Lumpkin, who was sworn in as a board member at our committee meeting. It was my understanding Mr. Lumpkin might be late for today's meeting, but you'll get to meet him shortly. We're very happy that he's part of our committee. He's an important member with Morgan Stanley, and we'll know more about him when he does show up, and we'll be able to welcome him officially. I now will entertain a motion that we have an executive session for the sole purpose of reviewing the financial statements for the year as of and for the year ended December 31st, 2014 and 2013, together with the internal audit, together with the auditor's report thereon.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been motion made and second. All in favor?
Aye.
You need a roll call.
Yeah, you're correct. We do need a roll call. Thank you. Mary?
Yes, sir. Mr. Corrado?
Yes.
Mr. Depp? Ms. Pearson?
Yes.
Ms. Hurd?
Yes.
Mr. Hogan?
Yes.
Ms. Howard?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Lumpkin? Mr. Williamson?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll now entertain a motion that we reconvene into our regular session.
So motioned.
Second.
Second. Okay. Sharon, it was moved and seconded that we reconvene into the regular session. Mary, will you please take a roll call?
Yes, sir. Mr. Corrado?
Here.
Mr. Depp?
Here.
Ms. Hairston?
Here, yes.
Ms. Hurd?
Here.
Mr. Hoagie?
Yes.
Ms. Howard?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Lumpkin? Mr. Williamson?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. We now go to committee reports. The first one is the Finance Planning Committee. Sharon?
The Finance, Personnel, and Planning Committees met for a jointly held meeting on April 21st, and as a result, 2 action items are being recommended today. Action item number 2, acceptance of the 2014 audit report. The 2014 financial statement audit was discussed in detail during executive session at the jointly held committee meeting. Mrs. Mary Stanford presented the RTA 2014 year-end financial statements. Also, Mr. Mike Phillips, Senior Audit Manager of Charles E. Harris and Associates, presented the audit opinions to the committee. The 2014 financial statement audit was also discussed during today's executive session. The 2014 financial statements included in today's board package represent the final statements. However, there may be slight wording changes prior to the final release of the report. The auditors present an unqualified opinion on pages 1 and 2, and there are no management letter comments or findings. Based upon the discussion included in both executive sessions mentioned above, I move to approve the financial statements for the years ended December 31st, 2014 and 2013, as well as the audit report thereon. Furthermore, this action will authorize the Secretary-Treasurer to transmit copies of the audit report to the appropriate federal, state, and local agencies and advertise in a newspaper of general circulation as required by Ohio Revised Code.
I'll second.
Okay, the motion has been made and second. Are there any further questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Any abstentions? Action item number 2 is unanimously approved.
Action item number 3, engine parts. This action item is for the purchase of engine parts, which is a routine procurement. The engine parts are used on a daily basis by the Maintenance Department to ensure the proper maintenance of the fleet. As the engines are comprised of hundreds of component parts, too numerous to list individually for bid purposes, the bidders are asked to bid a percentage of discount on the part manufacturer's published price schedules. As new national price lists are issued by the manufacturer of the parts, they will supersede the currently used list. However, the same plus or minus factor will apply. Mr. Bill Ingram provided a detailed explanation at our committee meeting, and the supporting information is included in your board package. Staff is available to answer any questions the board may have at this time. Based upon the recommendation of the Finance Personnel Committee, I move to award a contract to Kenworth of Dayton for engine parts for base years 1 through 5 and 2 option years at a not-to-exceed amount of $5,066,981. The annual amounts are detailed in today's board package. Actual expenditures will vary based on usage. Funds for engine parts are included in the maintenance operating budget.
I'll second.
Okay, the motion has been made and seconded. Are there any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Any abstentions? Action item number 3 is unanimously approved.
That concludes my action items. However, the March 2014 financial statements are included in today's board package along with the current sales tax information. Ms. Stanford is available to answer any questions related to these reports. And that concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Are there any questions of Sharon? Hearing none, we'll move on then to the Planning Committee report. Janet?
Thank you. The Finance, Personnel, and Planning Committees met on April 21st, and due to time constraints, the planning update information was deferred until the May 19th Joint Held Committee meeting. Much of the planning update information was already included in the April 21st committee packet. So that concludes my 5-second report. If there are any questions, Frank and I will be happy to answer them. Thank you.
It was very eloquently stated. Thank you. Okay, since there are no questions of Janet, we then move on to the Investment Advisory Committee. Dave?
Thank you, Mr. President. The Investment Advisory Committee met on April 23rd for an informative discussion regarding the RTA's cash and investment portfolio, as well as diesel fuel pricing and strategy. The committee is bringing forth one action item for consideration by the board this afternoon. At the meeting, RTA's fuel advisor, Jeff Lemunyon of Linwood Capital, discussed the low-price environment for diesel fuel that has existed for the past several months. Prices have fallen dramatically, and it is in RTA's best interest to consider locking in diesel fuel prices for up to 36 months. Mr. Lemunyon explained that as of April 23rd, a 2017 expected hedge cost was $2.25 per gallon, and also a 2018 expected hedge cost was $2.30 per gallon. As a reference point, RTA's diesel fuel budget for 2015 is about $3 a gallon. Today's board package includes a revised energy price risk management statement of policy and strategy, which has been modified to reflect a maximum hedge maturity of up to 36 months versus the previous time frame of up to 24 months. The maximum hedge maturity will be considered on an ongoing basis at regularly scheduled investment advisory committee meetings. And then, Mr. President, in anticipation of presenting this motion before the board and in reviewing the energy price risk management statement of policy and strategy, it was also discovered that there's a need to change another term in the statement of policy and strategy, whereas in the past we had been, because there were no futures in diesel fuel at the time, when the policy was originally adopted in March of 2008, it referred to heating oil futures. We no longer deal in heating oil futures. So with that in mind, my motion really has two parts, and that is that I move the board to approve a revision of the energy price risk management statement of policy and strategy in two respects. Number one, to change the references in the statement from heating oil to diesel fuel, and to change the the maximum hedge maturity from 24 to 36 months, and to add the language at paragraph D that the maximum hedge maturity will be considered on an ongoing basis at the regularly scheduled investment advisory committee meetings.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Vince seconded. Are there any questions or comments regarding this revised policy? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Any abstentions? Action item number 4 is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. In addition to that item, we also, at our advisory committee meeting, had a financial presentation from the good folks at Raymond James. Mr. Fink began his presentation by relating some historical perspective on the bond market, which, as the board knows, is where our investments lie. He went on to discuss key themes to his overall economic outlook, outlining those themes as domestic fundamentals, the Federal Reserve, and the rest of the world. Mr. Fink stated that the domestic economy in the first quarter of 2015 brought soft trends in retail sales, capital goods, and exports, adverse weather patterns, West Coast port labor disputes, and a correction in oil and gas-related drilling activity added to the softness in growth. Mr. Fink cited the potential for a slowdown in domestic growth due to the strength of the dollar having a negative impact on exports and corporate profits. Regarding the Federal Reserve, Mr. Fink stated that it appears increasingly less likely that the Fed will raise rates at the next policy decision dates, and the earliest expected date for an increase would be at the September meeting. Regarding the rest of the world, accommodative monetary policies and lower oil prices should help economic recoveries. Higher foreign yields combined with the relatively less accommodative monetary policy at home should continue to bolster the value of the dollar and attract foreign fixed income investors, keeping longer-term interest rates low for the near future. Mr. Schierlow then addressed the committee and explained that 10-year government bond yields across much of Europe are below 0.4% or even negative in some cases. With global rates and these conditions prevailing, U.S. Treasuries appear very attractive to foreign investors, and this should drive bond prices higher and yields lower. Mr. Drager then provided a review of our investment portfolio and outlook for future performance. The portfolio is currently composed of approximately 60% certificates of deposit and 40% federal agency securities. The average weighted maturity, effective maturity, and duration are 2.65 years, 1.22 years, and 1.18 years, respectively. The portfolio is currently producing a yield to worst return of 1.06% and yield to maturity of 1.26%. Just my own editorial comment, that's a whole lot better than the 0.4% or negative that they're getting in Europe. Mr. Drager mentioned that 5 of the step-up securities have experienced their first step, which has increased RTA's total projected annual income. Estimated annual income from the $36 million par value portfolio is $386,000. I've already talked a little bit about Mr. Lemunion's presentation, which led to the previously approved action item. Mr. Lemunion also discussed his quarterly diesel fuel price risk management report. Again, noted that the global petroleum market continues to be oversupplied. There is a lower rig count, increasing expectations of slower oil production here domestically. Expectations of slower growth gives support to prices. I think we're already seeing prices trickling upward. A strong U.S. dollar continues to depress the price in U.S. dollar terms because all oil is purchased in U.S. dollars worldwide. The balance between supply and demand is expected to improve as the year goes on. The balance will be restored by lower global production, higher demand, or both. After that balance is restored, the large inventories will remain and then need to be depleted, which all leads to the educated prediction that prices will probably remain low and expected price variability high. The following strategy was then recommended by Mr. Lemunion. RTA should keep its hedge position at least nearly at maximum for 24 months and consider extending the hedging to 36 months to take advantage of the low price environment for fiscal year 2017 and 2018, which is what action item number 4 as presented does. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report.
Thank you, David. Are there any questions or comments of David? You can see the complexities of the issues that the Investment Committee deals with. And as Mr. Williamson said, that 1% is certainly better than the negative rates that people get in foreign countries. But you also have to keep in mind that if inflation is up 2% and you're getting 1% on your money, the reality is we really have a negative 1% return of our money. So it actually would be worth less than 1%. But we're limited by where we can invest by state law. And just to compare that to several years ago when we were able to get 5-6% with the same types of investments that we now can get approximately 1%. So thank you for all the work that you and your committee put together on this and the other board members who attend freely. And we'll have to continue to monitor that because certainly the fuel prices is one of the most expensive items we have on the financial statements. Okay. Moving on, we then get to the Executive Director's report. Mark.
Thank you very much, Franz. I have some informational items. Last night I forwarded to the board and to our key staff some documents related to the Dayton Mall bus stop issue, and it was an interesting read. You have both the Able Law request for accommodation that was made to the owners, Glimpshire, as well as an initial response from a law firm representing Glimpshire, which I thought rather arrogantly stated that we don't have to have bus stops on the mall property at all. Which I didn't think was a very community-oriented response to the issue, and then went on to suggest that this matter is in our laps at RTA, and even, I think, kind of backhandedly suggested that we had an agreement on the stop they proposed, and we absolutely did not. Our agreement with the mall was predicated on a different stop location than what is currently the so-called approved bus stop location. So obviously, it's not over. We've made a commitment to the Able Law folks that if we can support in any way, we will. Their efforts to get a positive change here. I was asked yesterday if I was open to any sort of negotiated settlement. I said sure. any one of the half dozen options we've proposed that gets our customers closer to the door. So that's out there, but I'll keep you in the loop as we go forward. Also got some good news early in the week that ODOT Director Jerry Ray, his chief of staff, and I'll say his entourage, want to visit an urban transit system, and we've been selected. So in June, they're going to come and spend a half a day with us before heading north to see one of the rural systems. So they're very excited about a number of things going on here, especially the new electric bus project. So it will be great to get Director Ray here in town, and that will be fun. Well, what a great day it was to launch the bicycle project. For those who weren't on the square, that's the most people I've seen on the square in a long time. But it was really fun. It was well developed and put together. And obviously, we have a giant role in this project, and it's been fun already. But I would be remiss if I didn't thank a few people. Our buildings and grounds crew, a couple weeks ago, Bob said, well, I don't know if I'm going to have this bike shop ready. And of course, it was ready. And it's fantastic. If you get an opportunity, you have to go take a look at it. It's on the Main Street side of the frontage of the building. And of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Bob. Bob took this on, and this is not something we had really planned for this year. And when you see the bike shop, you'll see that it's a home run for sure. It's a great location. It got rave reviews today, especially from people from out of town. The B-Cycle folks were in and said, hands down, it would have won they apparently have this national competition for local bike shops, and they said it would have won hands down. But I want to mention one other name that you probably haven't heard before, and it's a guy named John Hoff, who works for Gene, used to work for Frank. John, well, he was handed this bike project to basically manage things on the startup. And I mentioned on the square today that I didn't think that John had slept in probably 3 weeks. He has worked day and night. He has built bikes, he's built stations, he's been out constantly. And you know me, I love the RTA core values. Well, I was out with John last night delivering some bikes to the stations, and Jerry Gustin back there was doing a lot of that work. At 11:37 p.m., I get an email from John Hoff asking me if I have time in the next week to sit down with him and tell him what he could have done better.
Wow.
And just incredible, that sort of an attitude. And this morning he was there. He stayed awake through the whole event. Obviously, John is one of our keepers. At some point, we'll have to get him here to a board meeting. He's now working with Gene primarily in performance management as an analyst for us. But John obviously likes to take on other things. So can't say enough about the work that's been done already and going forward. Last night on Brown Street, I was coming back from setting up one set of bikes, and there were UD students already riding bikes. So they had already gotten their memberships, and we're moving forward. So great things, a lot of fun. I left at your places a copy of a document our marketing team put together to kind of thank the elected officials who took time out to come to our stand-up day event on Courthouse Square. I want to thank Frank Eckler. He promised me 30 minutes of dry conditions, and we actually had it. It rained both before and after the event, and as it started, I could see the look on Frank's face, like, get up there and get this thing done before the rain comes in. We managed to do that. We got great coverage nationally in passenger transport, and we're going to be getting copies of that for our local elected officials, and really appreciate. We had everyone from ODOT, we had Republicans, we had Democrats, we had everybody on the stage for a single purpose, and that is to get Congress to consider a 6-year bill that's fully funded. Stay tuned. Maybe we'll get a positive there. I've been busy the last couple of weeks. Finally got to get together with our new city manager in Dayton, Warren Price. We had a great meeting. Warren Price has a bus background, so it was a good lunch. We talked about a lot of current issues and a lot of things we do with the city as a partner that I don't think he was aware of, and I think we'll have a great relationship there. Also made a presentation to the Huber Heights City Council in a packed room, and I thought, wow, did all these people come for me? No. But we did have a good presentation, and it was an outgrowth of the first suburbs meeting where I did a small presentation there, and I was asked by Jan Vargo if I would come to Huber. I said, I'd love to go to the suburbs occasionally. I don't get out much, but that was a good time. One other project you will be hearing more about. We have been working directly with the Veterans Administration here locally and the Montgomery County VA folks about finding better ways to get veterans to their medical appointments, basically. And it appears as though there's some funding that's been identified that will likely be turned over to us in conjunction with the veterans group to make sure that some of these rides will in fact happen. So we've got Brandon Polachicchio from operations and Sally Brown, another name you haven't heard much. You probably never heard of Sally Brown yet, but Sally has been managing our certification center. They've been working directly with the veterans on this project. That's a good news thing that'll be coming up in the next few months. Brandon called me today to update me and say that it's pretty much a done deal, but we'll put some manners on it and get something back to you. One last item I wanted to mention. You approved the audit report, and I've lost count of how many consecutive clean audits we've had, but it's a great thing. And to get audits without management letters for people like me is a big deal. But I'm not the one that drives that. It really starts with, Mary, our CFO, Bob Brzezinski, Robert Thomas, and the entire team we have here at Right Stop that focuses on our finances. And I just want to thank them personally because I appreciate those efforts that got us to this report today that's been adopted. And, the standard's there, so you have to meet it again next year, by the way. And that's all I have to report unless there are questions.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you for the good news and the updates on all these interesting areas. Are there any questions of Mark regarding his report? Okay, before we get into the old business section of our report, for the public, I want everyone to understand that we as a board take legitimate complaints very, very seriously and try to respond to those as effectively as we can. However, we also encourage our riders to, if there is a complaint, to bring it to the attention of management as soon as possible and not wait for long periods of time. In this regard, at our last meeting, there was one report by Mary Miller that she made that was pretty serious, and I thought it did require public response to that report. So let me turn the baton over to Mark, and I believe you will start the discussion on that.
Thank you, Franz. We did do a thorough investigation of the event, and we've asked Jerry Guston, who is representing Jim Napier today from our operations department, to report out on the findings that we had.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Afternoon.
Yeah, we did a thorough investigation on this, and on the 24th of April, Mr. Napier had sent a letter to Mrs. Miller about the investigation, advising her that we had spoken with the driver, we had looked at the video, and that the complaint that was made was found to be unsubstantiated based on our investigation. Been watching and listening to the actions of the driver, the bus operator. He tried diligently and I'm a former project mobility operator. That's how I started out here at RTA and worked with this driver, with all the other ones. And anyway, to put the safety of our customer before anything else. And it's clear, when conducting this investigation, that the operator at that time was, first of all, trying to get the fare for the ride. And then the young man said that he had a ticket, but there was no ticket. So the operator was trying to figure out what to do. And he said, well, you've got to have a ticket. And he says, I don't have a ticket. And then the young man stepped off of the bus. And the operator says, well, hold on a second. Let me call dispatch. So he called into dispatch to find out what was the best thing to do. And he was advised by dispatch that if there was no fare, then there couldn't be a ride provided. And at one point, the young man had stepped back onto the bus, and then because he was on the radio, telephone radio, you can see where he had closed the door on the bus so he could make sure that he stayed with him while he was trying to figure out what to do with the situation. And then once he determined from dispatch that he wasn't able to take the ride, voiced in the complaint, we were able to substantiate. So we felt like the driver did exactly what he was supposed to do. The operator called in, find out from supervision and or dispatch, here's our situation, here's what's going on, what would you all like me to do? That way it's not only getting the opinion, but he's also got it documented on the radio call, checking out to see what to do. And that there was no, it's when you observe the video, it's pretty uneventful. I mean, he tried to find a way to get him on the bus to take the trip, but that's the rule, is as long as, if there's no fare, then we can't provide the ride.
At any time, did the young man display a ticket or a pass?
No, ma'am.
Thank you.
Well, any other questions from the board? No. Thank you. Any other old business to come before the board? Any new business to come before the board? We now get to the public comment section of the. You'll have an opportunity during the public comment section. Okay. The first listing I have for public comment is Ms. Smothers, and I believe you know the procedure of stating your name, so I'll prevent going through that.
My name is Sandra Smothers. I'm a citizen of Montgomery County. I live at 215 McDaniel Street, apartment 107. Mr. Donahue, I'm not gonna jump your heart today, so don't look at y'all funny. My complaint is today, I got 10 calls this week, and several people are very highly upset, and I'm upset about it too. They can't get to church on Sunday, and they've been using the service, some of them have been using the service as long as I have, since '96, to get to church on Sunday. They've been getting rides refused, no trip. And these are older people, this is the only thing they depend on is Project Mobility. So I'm wondering, is it something you can do about it?
I'd be happy to comment.
Because something needs to be done, these people want to go to church, and I'm like this, don't hinder nobody from going to serve God.
Sure, we can get numbers like that down as far as we can if people will help us by cooperating with our request that everyone received in the mail to start booking trips based on arrival times. And we know people are resisting that. There's still about 59% of our daily bookings are being made based on a pickup time request. And in spite of that, we've had a growing number going to our requested arrival-based method. And because of that, our on-time performance spiked up in April over 90, it's actually 91.1%. So it's getting better. We cannot always get every day down to zero, but that's certainly our hope to do that, sure.
These people like to go to church on Sunday, they're older people, they're
Sure.
70. And, I'm gonna say something about it, but you guys will let
I'd just like to comment that I think it's important that they call us with their complaint as soon as possible.
7 days ahead of time, and they said they didn't have no trips to get to church. They haven't been to church in 2 Sundays.
Okay, so that's something, we need names
Well-
to follow up on that.
We've had 4 complaints about our recent letter regarding the scheduling change. I asked for an update the other day. I was told there were 4 complaints to date, so.
Our second speaker is Ms. Miller.
Yes, board members, I would like to first comment.
Could you state your address, please?
Mary Miller, 85 Ridge Road, apartment 41, Woodville, Ohio, 45309. First thing on the complaint, I never filed a complaint. A complaint was taken for me by several people. I received a call from, what was her name? Can't think of his name, but anyway, I talked to Mr. Whitmore, I talked to Thomas Nichols, I talked to several people, and I as I told Mr. Napier. That aside, he was sent and we received a no-call, no-show. The day he was in the hospital, we were in the emergency room. I got a phone call on my voicemail because the phone call would not go through. I could not respond. When I got home, I called to file the complaint originally. I was told to dial 425-8383. I left a voicemail. I gave a basic description of what had happened. I never wrote out a complaint, but I was given several different versions by Mr. Thomas, Mr. Napier, and others. My thing was I was trying to find out what had actually occurred. And to this day, I have not been able to do so because he was given an orange ticket, which miraculously appeared in his apartment, but was not on scene when he was taken to the hospital. Nobody knows when he got it. The other thing was, he got this no-call, no-show letter, and it is for, the one no-call is for the return trip from Tabernacle Baptist Church. He never got to church. This was Easter Sunday. And if they called dispatch, RTA should be a little bit more compliant. If you send out all of these little green tickets to everyone to try to encourage trips, why not allow this disabled young man to get to his service? He told me, I think what he was trying to tell the driver was his grandmother was there and she had more tickets. But it never happened. It left him, and he got upset, got sick, ended up in the hospital. My biggest question is, if the driver did all this to dispatch, why? Yeah, thank you.
Ms. Miller, will you please give all of that information to our people so that they can, okay.
Just a point of clarification. The response to the complaint was the complaint made at the board meeting. That's what the letter's based on. We do not allow our bus drivers to reach into the pockets or the personal belongings of any customer. And I know Ms. Miller's son is a regular customer. And so the driver clearly did what he was supposed to, and even followed up, got out of the vehicle at the end, went around to the door of the building to make sure William got back in the building, since he appeared to be unattended.
Thank you.
I still a ticket out there to him about my neighbor. So I was home. The neighbors were screaming because they didn't know what was wrong and he had a seizure. And I immediately called Miss Miller so she could get in. I called the ambulance. I was dead.
Okay. May I ask that maybe this conversation take place after the board meeting with all the appropriate individuals? Are there any board member comments or announcements that one would like to make?
Mr. Hoagie, I would like to offer thanks to the RTA. I'm a member of the Dayton chapter of the Links Incorporated, and we have an educational program and partner with Louise Troy. And we wanted to supply an opportunity to those kids and their families and a night to be able to go to the Boonshoff Museum of Discovery. In looking at the zip codes for the museum's memberships, not one family or student in that area has ever been or has a membership. So we provided memberships to all the students, and so for their family fun night, we had 700-plus people in the museum, and the RTA was helpful in helping transport those families to that night. So I just want to, on behalf of the Links, thank the RTA for their support of that initiative.
Thank you, Sharon. Very nice.
Mr. President, I just want to comment too. I think if we all come together to stand up for transportation so that at some point in the future, perhaps even in our respective terms on this board, perhaps we won't have to be collecting tickets or fares of any kind for our clientele, and these kinds of issues won't have to come up. So what we all need to do is to make certain we advocate with our elected officials to fund an adequate transportation bill so that we can no longer have to have these kinds of issues in the future.
And just piggyback off of that, as you see in the financial statements, our very heavy dependence upon federal and state funding. Our buses are funded 80% by the federal government, and we get certain funds for operation purposes. Without that, we would have a difficult time maintaining the RTA. So it is so important, as Mr. Williamson said, that we stand up for transportation. And there's a lot of needs, and the concerns we have, considering the shortage of funds at the state level, the shortage of funds at the federal level, will there become a time when we will not get the funds we need? So it's a difficult time, so we need everyone to make it known and write your congressman, speak to your local elected officials, the importance of standing up for transportation. Any other comments? Thank you, thank you. Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So motioned.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Thank you.